On behalf of the Mount Washington Valley Economic Council, we'd like to welcome you all. As usual, when we have a speaker on a particular topic, we love seeing members of that industry coming in to gain a little first-hand knowledge from a commissioner, and I really thank Roger for, again, making the trek north. We talked about the fact he's been on the job now for 14 years as our commissioner, and I think he came up here his first year, too. So, first of all, I need to thank the sponsors for the Economic Council, which are HEB Engineering and Drive Brand Studio. And our business sponsor today is White Mountain Oil, and I have the pleasure of introducing Dana Jones. Dana, did we get the basket up here yet? Okay, no, I'll get it. Here, you have the mic.
Oh, I have a mic? Oh, wow. Good morning. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dana Jones. I'm the marketing manager with White Mountain Oil. I'm just going to say a couple of words because we have that privilege, being a sponsor, to talk a little bit about our company. The first thing I want to say, and the most important thing I want to mention this morning, is that 2016, this year, is the 75th anniversary of White Mountain Oil and Propane. So there you go. I wasn't there, but I was almost there. The company was actually started by Ben Saunders in 1941, Ben and his wife Ethel, and it was run by his son, Glenn Saunders, when I came up here as a ski bum in the late 70s, and I've worked for Glenn my whole career, and it's currently run by their two sons, Mark and Kirk Saunders, so I got that in. But it is our 75th anniversary. Look forward to some exciting events in that regard, and especially our bratwurst broil, which most people know about, which is June 10th, if you want to write that down or put it in your phones. That's always a big thing. Just a very quick snapshot that's in my brain this morning, talking in front of the Economic Council, is just how important cold weather is to this whole town. It's nobody's happy when it's 4 degrees, and everybody thinks I'm happy because I'm in the oil business. Oh my God, you must be happy. What makes us happy and what makes everybody happy, I think, is normalcy. Just having a normal winter, having a normal summer. But it is incredible how important the weather is to this town. Old Ben Saunders told me once, the oil business is just like farming, and it's true. And as a skier, I often forget about cross-country skiing, snowmobiling, ice fishing. Those are huge sports. They bring a lot of money into this town. And as a manager at the oil business, I spend a lot of my time planning for all these events, but you can't plan for freakish weather. We just had the warmest December ever, and the impact on that to this town and what it does to the cross-country ski areas, towns like Jackson, is amazing. But 10 months ago, we had the coldest February ever. And it's sort of an odd statistical subject. You have to wrap your head around this, but we actually had the coldest single month, February, and the warmest single month, December, in one calendar year. So how do you plan for that? I don't have a clue. So what you can do is, with my gift certificate here, instead of planning for it, you can go to the Muddy Moose and have a drink. I pick? Okay. One of our loyal customers is the Muddy Moose restaurant, and they're a very community-involved restaurant in this town, and Jim Abraham has been very kind to give a $100 gift certificate to the Muddy Moose to take your family to lunch or dinner, and that goes to... Wow. You know, Ed, the smallest thing on your business card is actually your name. Ed, very good, very good. There you go. Thank you very much. Okay. There you go.
Okay, thank you, Dana. And now it is with great pleasure, and I know you're going to have a major interest, that I introduce our Commissioner of Insurance, Roger Selby.
Do I need the mic, Linda? Or
No, you're mic.
I don't. Oh, that's right, I am. Son of a gun. I am wired. Great to be here, folks. I really enjoy coming up here. I've been up here a number of times. I enjoy being out in the public eye and speaking about the things I'm going to talk to you about this morning. Interesting. This is sort of like church. If I'm going to be close to you, I'm going to have to walk down the aisle. But I know I can't do too much straying because she's trying to film me, and She says she can move a little bit, so if I start to walk toward you, it's okay.
And Roger, one more thing.
Yeah.
If folks have questions, we want to get it on the mic because we've had a complaint from Valley Vision that they can't hear the questions. So I have the mic and I'll pass it to you when you have a question.
Great. Now, okay, what am I talking about? What I want to talk about this morning is what we do at the insurance department. You'd be surprised how little the public knows about what our function is, what we do, what we can do, what we can't do, how we can help consumers, and that sort of thing. It always amazes me because we try to be in the public eye. First, I forgot, I'm sorry. I need to introduce the two folks from the insurance department that are here with me. Danielle Barrick, who is our communications director. And Danielle has been a great addition to staff 2 years ago now, is it 2? Yeah. Helping us get the word out to the public, helping us work with the press to let people know what we do or don't do and how we do it, helping to interpret all of the stuff that comes out of either the legislature or Washington, D.C. and that sort of thing. And John Elias, who just came aboard with us last week, is our property casualty director as well as our director of market regulation. So I'm happy to have both of them here with me this morning. Anyway, I'm going to talk a little bit about what we do. I'm going to talk about some current issues. One thing I'm not going to focus on, I'm not going to focus on any one of these things, but I'm not going to focus, like I have so often of late, on health insurance. It will be part of what I talk about, but it's not by any means going to be all of what I talk about. I'm going to talk about how we coordinate with other states. I'm going to talk about insurances for businesses, something that you either already know about or should know about. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about New Hampshire health cost. Let me start with what we do. First of all, the New Hampshire Insurance Department was the first insurance department established in the United States in 1851. So we're proud to say that we are the first, we are the leader as far as insurance departments nationally. This is the statute that controls how we're organized, what we do. Some of the things that we're charged with doing is collection of premium taxes. Representative Butler and I were just talking about premium taxes. It's a big thing. It's a big deal. In New Hampshire, depending on the type of insurance you're selling or buying, and the premium generated will depend on the percentage of premium tax that the company is charged. We collect something a little under $100 million in premium tax, and we collect another that brings us up over $100 million in fees that we charge to agents and brokers and other ways that we generate a little bit of funding. But to the state of New Hampshire's economy, the insurance department, through its work with either premium tax or fees, brings in over I keep wanting to say 100,000, over $100 million. That's very significant. We regulate insurance. We regulate insurance companies, producers, which are agents and brokers, consultants, and adjusters. As I always say, whenever I speak in front of anybody and talk about the insurance department and what we do, I always talk about the fact that, in my mind, my most important job is solvency regulation. If companies are not solvent and unable to pay claims, then you who have purchased insurance and rely on them to pay your claim will either not get it paid, have to go to a guarantee fund and hope that it ends up being covered a long time later, or that sort of thing. So again, we pay really, really close attention to solvency regulation. How do we do it? We examine all of the companies. The State of New Hampshire Insurance Department examines all of the companies that are domesticated in the state of New Hampshire physically, on site. We go to the companies every 5 years. We do examinations. In addition to that, we do financial analyses on these companies every quarter. So we've got a pretty good understanding of how these companies are operating from a financial standpoint. What happens with companies that are not domesticated in the state of New Hampshire? Well, Those are the same sort of process. It's a uniform process across the country that's employed by all insurance departments. And the glue in all of this, because there is no insurance regulator, and please, don't ever bring in Washington, D.C. to help me regulate insurance. We don't need them. We think we do, and I'm talking about nationally at every state level. We think we do a really good job at regulating the insurance industry, and we really don't want Washington's help. The glue, though, that keeps us together and keeps us uniform is the National Association of Insurance Commissioners. Every state belongs to the association. It's very significant. It's headquartered in Kansas City, also with an office in Washington, D.C. and New York City. And we meet regularly. The meetings that we have involve every state and involve discussions around every line of insurance that any of us would either purchase or know about or not know about. The NAIC, as it's called, develops model laws, brings them to state legislatures for consideration. It's a very important, significant part of state regulation of insurance, but the key, it is not a regulator. It helps us do our job, but it has no regulatory role. Okay. You can see we've got 59 domestic companies. We've got, in addition to that, our 59 domestics, we've got 377 licensed to do life and health insurance, and 706 licensed to do property casualty. Auto, commercial lines, homeowners, workers' comp, every line of property casualty. Our market in New Hampshire, especially in property casualty, is a very dynamic, very competitive market. If you don't like I've told folks many, many times, if you don't like the product that you've got or what you're paying for insurance for your car, your home, your business, whatever, shop around. Go talk to somebody else about it. Because again, a very competitive market. Our markets in property casualty are very competitive. What does that mean? It means that for the same product, depending on the company you buy it from, you can pay from A to Z and get pretty much an equally good product. It depends on who you want to do business with, whether you've done your due diligence to look at the company's rating, at the company's solvency matters, and all of that sort of thing. We license not only insurance companies, but producers who are agents and brokers. We've got over 70,000 producers licensed in the state of New Hampshire, not all resident in the state, because producers sell across state lines, so they apply for a non-resident license. They get issued a non-resident license, and anyway, that's how many that we regulate currently. Our consumer services, you can see the number of consumer complaints that we've received and the number of inquiries that we've received, and what our staff at the insurance department has been able to recover for consumers. I'm very proud of the work that our staff does. We do our best to assist consumers, and frequently that assistance is simply helping them understand who they're dealing with. We don't negotiate with companies. We don't try to settle somebody's claim for them, but we may be able to help them navigate their way through the system. Not always, but if we can, we do. If it's a matter of a liability matter where there's a question on what the damages are and what they should be paid, that's not part of what we get involved with. We tell them that if they're not satisfied with what the company is offering them, unless it's totally unfair, in which case we can take action, we tell them that they may need to seek the advice of a lawyer. So again, we don't put ourselves out there as being able to solve everybody's problems, but if a consumer has a complaint, we take the complaint seriously, we investigate it. We take a look, first of all, we take a look at whether or not any state law has been violated, and if so, we take action. If one has not, and all the consumer needs is a little help navigating their way through, then we help them. Anyway, that's how our consumer division works. I'm very proud of the work they do. We've got some good folks. If you ever have a concern or a complaint, please contact us. We'll do our best to try to assist you. Revenue collection, I mentioned earlier, we bring in more than $100 million. It was 114.6 in 2015. Market regulation, the folks that work for John, a number of them go out and actually go into companies and take a look at how they conduct business. They may take a look, a very focused look at how they conduct business. In other words, how do they settle claims? How do they charge customers and that sort of thing? And if we find violations, then two things are important to me. The first thing is that the behavior is corrected and the consumer made whole. That's number one. And number two, if there's a sanction to be applied, we apply the sanction. But I'm not in the business of simply applying sanctions. I'm more concerned with making sure that the consumer is treated the way that they should be treated. Where am I? Enforce laws. Yeah, we prosecute fraud. I don't know if you've seen them, but we do occasionally hit the paper because somebody has committed fraud. And one of the things that we're able to do, because we're not the Attorney General that's very busy in pursuing the much larger stuff, we can look into the small stuff. What's small stuff? Small stuff is somebody gets into an accident and doesn't have insurance, and they're liable. They went through a stop sign. Well, about an hour later, they have insurance. And oh my goodness. Well, we investigate those kinds of things, and we prosecute those kinds of things. They're not huge prosecutions. They typically don't end up getting the person jail time, but hopefully if Danielle's able to get it published, it gets the word out to the rest of the public that, hey, the insurance, it was only a $3,000 claim, but the insurance department was out there, the person was fined, the person had to give the money back, and had the chance of going to jail, had the courts seen fit to do that. So anyway, that's an important part of what we do, and it's important that even the smaller ones get pursued, because that I think is what impacts behavior. We provide support to policymakers. People like Representative Butler. We've worked with Ed countless times at helping develop language that might go into a piece of legislation, at testifying on that piece of legislation, at providing data that's necessary to be able to understand it, so that the legislators that are contemplating it can better understand what it is that they're working on. And that's a big part of our job. Legislature just went back into session. We've got a lot of folks that go down and testify constantly. Linda was telling you earlier that I've been with the department 14 years. The first year and a half I was the assistant commissioner, and then the commissioner. And I've testified before the legislature beginning as early as 14 years ago. It used to be, when I first took over as commissioner, there was only about 2 or 3 people at the insurance department that did testify or even knew how to testify or any of that sort of thing. I was one of them, my deputy, and there was one other person. We now have, I can't even count them on 2 hands. My job has been to see how many bills do I not have to go and testify on, but have the experts, the people that know more about the product or whatever's being deliberated, that know more than I do. And we've got experts in every line of insurance that work at the department. That's been my goal, and I'm happy to say that that's what you're going to see. And Ed will tell you that we've got some good quality people that go there and testify on health insurance, life insurance, property casualty, workers' comp, you name it, that are able to help the legislature. And I go occasionally, but I don't have to anywhere near as I used to. Health insurance. Health insurance, of course, has always been a big topic of discussion. Got a lot bigger with the passage of the Affordable Care Act, and most recently got even bigger with the opioid crisis. We've been in the middle of it from an insurance standpoint. We're currently doing, by the way, we're doing an examination of all companies that sell health insurance, 5 major companies that sell health insurance in the state of New Hampshire, and we're looking very specifically at their compliance with the mental health parity law. In other words, are they treating people that have mental health issues in a way that's similar to, and is there parity to the way they treat people that have a physical illness? And we're looking very deeply into that We've got some folks that work for John that are working on that as market examiners, market conduct examiners. We've hired some outside consultants to help us understand what it is that the company's doing with regard to behavior. We're looking at denials of these kinds of claims, the reasons they were denied, all of that sort of thing. We're going to be in a position to be able to give some initial report to the legislature by the end of this month. That's really critical, because if the companies are behaving the way they're supposed to be, that's great. If they're not, then that's not so great. In either instance, the legislature may or may not want to put in some laws to have things done differently. But it's hard to do. You know, my advice has always been, don't do something just to do something. Have the facts before you do it. And what we're trying to do our best to make sure that the legislature has the facts that they need to decide whether or not new legislation with regard to the insurance industry and insurance products is needed. We're reviewing the Anthem-Cigna merger. My guess is that we're going to be having a hearing at some time in the future. I'll be the hearing officer, so I have had a wall built between me and the rest of my staff that's working on looking at this, because if I'm going to be the hearing officer, then I have to go into it as objectively as I possibly can. So I can't tell you much about it. If you want to learn about it, call my deputy, Alex Feldwebel. He's leading the other side of the aisle, and he can tell you what you need to know. But what you do need to know is that we're looking very closely at what the Anthem-Cigna merger, what impact it's going to have on citizens of the state of New Hampshire. We look at cost drivers in healthcare all the time. I've got two folks. I've got a health policy analyst and a health policy statistician whose job in large part is to look behind the cost of healthcare and health insurance. Why is it so expensive? What is causing the cost of insurance to continue to go up as much as it is? And I can tell you that we've got a lot of, if you look at our website, you'll see a lot of reports that we've commissioned be done, a lot of studies that we've commissioned to be done that delve deeply into the subject of cost of health care. If you're interested, I would recommend it to you. I can also tell you that it's some pretty, no, I wouldn't say esoteric, but it's some pretty deep reading. I mean, there's stuff in there because it does delve into it pretty deeply. Basically said, though, the cost of health insurance is directly related to the cost of health care. As the cost of health care goes up, you can be assured that the cost of health insurance is going to go up. Companies try to compete and find efficiencies where they can. They're bound by the ACA to have to, if they don't spend 80% of what they take in for premium, then people get rebates. The other 20% makes up whatever expenses, whatever administrative expenses and profit that may be in there. But again, the biggest driver is the 80%, and most companies spend more than 80% for cost of care. As that goes up, you can rest assured that the premiums are going to continue to go up. What do we need to do? I believe that what we need to do is to continue to look more deeply at how these costs can be better managed. In other words, how's the delivery of care? Is it working as efficiently as it should? The cost of procedures, the cost of care, the networks we have. You all know about when Anthem was the only player in town on the exchange, and it had what was called a limited network. Well, the limited network was legal. We had a hearing on that. It was determined to be compliant with the law, but there were a lot of citizens in the state of New Hampshire that were upset over that were angry because their hospital or provider wasn't part of the network. It's the way the system works. And if that sort of behavior wasn't exhibited by carriers in their negotiations, then the cost could have been even higher. Anyway, that's what goes into it. There is a law, like I said, that addresses how networks are put together, who can be in a network, and that sort of thing. Workers' comp, we are the approvers of annual rates. The rates are filed by NCCI, the National Commission on Compensation Insurance, on our behalf. They work in 36 or 38 states, or Paul, maybe you remember, right? But anyway, they're in a significant number of states. They develop rates, they propose them to us. Our actuaries look at them, make sure that the rates that were developed and suggested are not only accurate, but are adequate. You know, one of the things that we do when we look at rates, regardless of the line of insurance, is to look at rates to make sure they're adequate. Remember I talked about solvency when I first started to talk? Well, if rates are not adequate, as has happened in the market, and we've seen it happen, thankfully not here in New Hampshire, but rates are not adequate, a company will ultimately sort of go into a death spiral and not have sufficient funds to be able to pay claims. Some folks are surprised that I look at rates to make sure they're high enough. Well, I make sure that they're not unfairly discriminatory, that they're not too high, but that they're adequate to be able to continue to survive as a company. The Governor's Commission on Workers' Compensation, I had the good fortune or bad fortune, I'm not sure which, but of chairing a Governor's Commission on Workers' Compensation, looking at what could be done to the cost drivers on workers' comp. Paul was part of that commission. We met, I don't know how many times, but many times last fall, in looking to see if there was any legislation that might be proposed. There was one piece of legislation that was proposed, and it was a very, very small fix to the issue, but I think it was an important one. And let me tell you what the fix was. It used to be, before the fix was put in, that anything billed by a provider had to be paid as billed. This fix says that an insurance company can challenge it if they believe it's excessive, if they choose to. So that's a big deal, because if it really you had providers that were literally unfettered with regard to what they could charge. What? Oh, that's all right. Data collection, we collect a lot of data. We continue to look at data collection under workers' comp. The NCCI is instrumental in collecting that data. It's what helps them develop the rates that they charge and be able to assist us in thinking through what sorts of things may or may not need to be done. Okay, Uber. Uber's winding its way through, is it transport? What? It's not your committee, Ed. It's transportation. And essentially, we're part of the testimony on that bill because it involves the kind of insurance policies that the Uber drivers will need to have to be able to operate as Uber drivers. And we're working with the legislature on the language. They're using a model that was put together by the National Council of Insurance Legislators. And we're working with legislators to make sure that it conforms with other parts of the insurance statutes. And my guess is that if the legislature goes along with it, you're going to have a piece of legislation that allows policies to be developed, filed with us for approval, to be used by operators of the Uber networks or Lyft networks or whatever they are. So anyway, that's happening as we speak. I spoke a little bit about the National Association of Insurance Commissioners. Again, very, very significant as far as I'm concerned. They provide services to every state that are incredible. They developed and maintained all of the services that are used by every state to file rates and forms. That's a big deal. It's uniform. No matter what state you're in, you're going to use the same system to file your rates and your forms. You all read about the Anthem cyber attack that happened many, many months ago. Well, the effort at looking into what happened and whether or not sanctions need to be taken or how consumers need to be, what needs to be addressed with regard to consumers, that's all coordinated at the NAIC level. You've got 6 or 7 lead states that are leading the effort at looking into it. New Hampshire's one of them. I decided early on I want to be part of that. And the reason I decided I wanted to be part of it is not because we're a big state, but it's because more than half of the citizens of the state of New Hampshire were impacted by it. And I said, if it's that significant, then I want to be in the middle of it. I want to understand what's going on. I want to make sure that what ends up happening is good for the state of New Hampshire. Company solvency I talked about a little bit earlier. Life insurance settlements, another thing that New Hampshire was very, very heavily involved in, still is looking at life insurance companies with regard to how they treat beneficiaries of life policies and beneficiaries of annuities. And the use of what's called the Social Security Death Master File. I don't know if any of you are familiar with it, but it's where the record of a death is captured. Insurance companies can avail themselves of that Death Master File, and we're availing themselves of it, not in every instance, but in some instances, only for annuities so that they could stop the annuity, but not to pursue who had a life insurance policy that they had missed in their records. So we said, no, you can't do that. You, number one, have to correct your behavior. Remember I said when we do market regulation stuff, correcting behavior is of prime importance. Got to correct your behavior, make all of these consumers whole, and we've done it at the NAIC level very systematically. MetLife, Prudential, you name it, all of the big companies, we've looked at all of them. As a result of it, many consumers were, quote, made whole, and they were sanctioned. These companies were sanctioned some pretty big bucks. New Hampshire participated in those sanctions to the level of premium that was developed in the state of New Hampshire for the products that were examined. But again, we've been sort of behind the scenes. Danielle's put out some press releases, but you know, the press releases we put out never say, you know, Joe Blow killed on an accident, you know, I mean, they're very fly below the radar kind of thing. She's trying to jazz up the titles, but so that people read them, and you know, because otherwise, you know, it's been in the paper, but oh geez, I must have missed that. Anyway, just know that we're involved in that. Price optimization. What is that? What am I talking about? There are some that's being looked at very closely at the NAIC level because there are some carriers that are looking to optimize the price they can charge. Now you say, well, is that bad? Well, maybe not. I mean, if it's based on risk and risk factors and all of that sort of thing, it's not bad. But if it's based on something that has nothing to do with risk, I don't know if it is yet or not. In other words, if I've been with the same company that I've been with for the past 30 years and I don't shop around, does that mean that I can be charged a little higher premium because I'm not likely to shop? And I, you know, that's being looked at all across the states to see whether or not it's something that that we should approve, disapprove, or do something with, or what. So no conclusions on that yet, but know that that we're looking at that pretty closely. Model laws, that's a big deal. The NAIC develops model laws that are used by, and they're developed in a very thoughtful, deliberative process. When we present a model to someone like Representative Butler and his committee, he can rest assured that this has been looked at throughout the country, that it's been opined on by regulators, by industry, by consumer groups, by legislators, by you name it, before it even reaches his desk. So it's had a lot of eyes look at it, and it can add a little bit of credibility to what it is that we're trying to do. Okay, I'm not going fast enough, am I? How long do I have?
Till 10.
Oh, okay. All right. Coverage for business, the stuff that you folks would want to know about that might face business. The type, the scope, the price is going to vary among insurers. As you know, if you've shopped whatever coverage you purchase, if you've shopped it, you know that it's either easy to get, not so easy to get. A lot of companies sell what it is that would cover you. Not many companies sell what it is that would cover you. But typically you can find coverage that will suit your needs. Sometimes the price isn't quite where you'd like it to be, but again, I urge folks to shop around and try to do the best that they can. Very important in all of this is your agent or broker. That person gets paid to understand the insurance policies that they're selling, and to be able to explain them to you, all of what goes into them, and to further be able to work with you at, if there are multiple companies that provide quotes on a particular type of insurance, at getting you those quotes, doing quote comparisons with you, being able to point out to you that, yeah, this one may be a little lower, but you don't get as much coverage. You're missing coverage here, there, or wherever. And I urge consumers, regardless of the line of insurance you're talking about, shop around and make sure that you deal with a licensed agent or broker. They're the ones that can best help you do the shopping that you need to do to be able to buy the product that's going to suit you. Workers' compensation. Insurance in New Hampshire, it says it's the only one that's mandated, but I forgot. Under the ACA, there's a health insurance mandate too. Forgot about that, sorry.
Details.
Small detail. But I knew you folks were, mostly P&C folks. But anyway, workers' compensation in New Hampshire is mandatory except if you're a sole proprietor, if you can still buy it if you're a sole proprietor, and you can still have coverage for yourself if you choose to. You don't have to. If you have employees, though, you need to buy the coverage. If you have employees and you're incorporated, you can exclude up to 3 officers of the corporation from coverage, and provide coverage for the rest of your business, the rest of your employees. Where am I? Okay, other kinds of coverage that you may or may not have, I certainly would recommend that if you're in business that you look at these as coverage that you probably should avail yourselves of. Commercial general liability, commercial property, and inland marine. CGL, or commercial general liability, covers claims due to accidents and injuries. They protect you from the lawsuit that could be brought if somebody falls on your property. And one thing to understand is that you may have taken every precaution in the world, and someone falls due to no fault of yours at all, they can still bring suit. So you need the protection. You need to have the insurance carrier there to be able to step in your shoes and defend the case if that's what needs to be done. Or if there was liability, to be able to handle the claim so that suit isn't brought, or so that it's settled in a way that that doesn't provide you with greater exposure. So anyway, CGL I think is an important component of liability coverage. And like I said, they protect you against your own negligence, but more importantly, they protect you regardless of when you've been negligent or not. Can you back it up 1 second? Okay, optional coverages that you can buy. Products liability. If you make a product, you may want to consider having products liability, because if that product ends up having a defect and injuring somebody or burning down a plant or whatever it might do, you want to be, if you don't have the coverage and it's determined that it's your development of that product and you were liable, that's a big deal. If you've got the coverage, that's going to help. That's going to help because the company steps in your place. Completed operations. If you're a contractor and you complete an operation and something happens after you've completed that operation where it's determined that you're liable for whatever it is, whatever accident or the collapse of a building or you name it, if you've got that sort of coverage, then again, the insurance carrier can step in your behalf. Employment practices liability insurance. 14 years ago, I didn't talk about that at all. Today, it's a big deal because employees are just as apt to bring suit for wrongful termination, for discrimination, for you name it, as anything. So I think it's important that you consider it if you've got employees, that you consider purchasing employment practices liability that would protect you. The company would step in into your shoes because, again, you can be sued for wrongful termination even though the person was not wrongfully terminated. That doesn't prevent them from bringing a suit. If you want the protection, that's the coverage you need to avail yourself of. Commercial property insurance, certainly you all know what commercial property insurance is. If there's an accident where there's a fire or where there's a whatever, there's a collapse of a building, there's you name it, that involves property, and it's a covered loss, it's a covered peril. Make sure you understand your policy. Make sure you've gone over that policy with your agent or broker. They've explained to you what the policy covers, what it doesn't cover, and not all commercial property policies cover the same thing. So understand what you're buying is basically what I'm saying. Oh, yes.
Do any of those policies cover being hacked and results of having been your information being stolen?
Yes. That's a whole new, relatively new line of insurance that's been developed fairly recently for cyber liability. Anthem had cyber liability insurance. The NAIC has cyber liability insurance because the NAIC collects a ton of data on rates and forms and all of that sort of thing. And you as an individual, talk to your agent about it. You can buy cyber liability coverage so that in the event that you're hacked and your data, and you have personal data, for example, a doctor's office or whatever, then you can be protected from liability by patients or whoever it is. So yes, it's available, and yes, I would suggest that if you are in the business of collecting data or doing anything with data that involves cyber stuff, that you take a serious look at whether or not you would benefit from having that sort of insurance. But it's, like I said, it's new in the marketplace. These policies do come before us for review. We have to approve them before. Speaking of that, we approve policies before they're sold in personal lines and small commercial, health insurance, life insurance. And we do that as a consumer protection. It's part of our job to make sure that those policies comply with the law. Large commercial, we don't, because typically there's somebody who's responsible for risk management, somebody who understands the insurance world to begin with. But the smaller ones, especially personal lines, auto, homeowners, and that sort of thing, we look very closely at the forms that are filed with us and the rates that are filed with us to make sure that they comply with state law and that they're, quote, not against public policy. I was going to say, what happened to the button? Okay. No, more. One more. Okay, commercial motor vehicle insurance, I'm sure you know, I mean, that's akin to personal auto insurance. If you've got vehicles as part of your business, and I would imagine in the oil business, you've got a number of vehicles. And you need coverage for those vehicles because if they get into an accident or they cause damage or whatever, you want to make sure not only that your own property gets taken care of, your own truck or vehicle, but that if you're liable, whoever it is you did damage to gets taken care of as well. So, you know, again, commercial vehicle liability, and it may be that you need it even though you don't own a vehicle. If you use a vehicle on a regular basis that's owned by someone else, again, you need to talk to your agent or broker about that. You need to find out if you're in a contract with somebody, what that contract requires you to do, and then take care of matters. But your best place, I sound like a broken record, but talk to your agent or broker. Okay. Health insurance. I'm sure you're all more aware of what goes on in health insurance today than you may have been 3 or 4 years ago. Since the ACA, small employers, 50 FTEs or fewer, are not required to offer employees insurance. You can, but you're not required to. There's no penalty. Employees can purchase their coverage through the New Hampshire Exchange. The New Hampshire Exchange is not the New Hampshire Exchange. It's a federally facilitated exchange that operates in New Hampshire to provide coverage to individuals that want to avail themselves of health coverage using the exchange. There are many, many, many plans on the exchange. I forget how many there are this year, 43 maybe, or 53, I've forgotten. Anyway, very different from when the first year it was operating, when Anthem was the only carrier. There weren't many plans. Now there are many plans that run the gamut. There are 4 companies that sell on the exchange. Anthem is one of them, Harvard Pilgrim's another, Maine Community Health Options is another, Minuteman's another. And there are companies that operate off the exchange as well. So again, I would never pretend to be able to stand here and tell you about all of these coverages. I would again be that broken record. Talk to your agent or broker. Talk to someone that understands health insurance and can help you understand what it is you need, number one, and what you can afford, what you want to buy, et cetera, et cetera. They're key, they're important. You know, when the ACA was first coming out, I met with agents and brokers on numerous occasions, and they had this great fear that, you know, oh my goodness, we're not going to be needed anymore. This exchange is going to be automatic. And I said, no, don't kid yourself. You're going to be probably even more important than you have been in the past, because this is tough stuff to understand. If you've ever tried to compare 43 plans and understand the distinctions and the co-pays and the deductibles and the co-insurance, and that's tough stuff. And I suggest, you know, getting some help trying to understand it. The shop exchange, what I can tell you is that it is operating in New Hampshire. And again, that broken record, if you want to avail yourself of using the shop exchange where you can get certain tax credits, you as the business can get certain tax credits, talk to your agent or broker, because again, that's not operated by the state of New Hampshire, it's operated at the federal level. Your agent or broker is going to be familiar with what goes on with the shop exchange. If he or she is not, go find another one. Because again, that's their job, is to be able to appropriately explain to you what the coverages are that are available, what you need to do to provide coverage to your employees using the shop exchange. Okay, how does the federally facilitated exchange work? In New Hampshire, the federal government does most of the work. It maintains the website, the call center. It decides which plans can be certified. The good news is it's called a federally facilitated partnership exchange because in the first instance, New Hampshire gets to review the rates and the forms and gets to approve them and recommend them to the federal government. So we have sort of first right of refusal, so to speak. We have to make sure that the rates are not excessive. We have to do a lot of things, that the forms comply with as qualified health plans, that they contain what's called EHPs, the essential health benefits. All of that sort of thing happens in the first instance with us. The folks that review forms at the department and rates at the department are the first ones to look at it. That all gets uploaded to the federal government. It's done in a very strict timeline fashion. Feds approve it. The product goes on the exchange. It becomes available to your agent or broker or to you so that you can purchase it off of the exchange, either the individual exchange or the shop exchange. The New Hampshire Insurance Provider, I just mentioned that we get our first dibs on it. And the New Hampshire Health Plan is the outreach and education throughout the state. That's going to last one more year. The insurance department tried to applied and were allowed to get a grant to do the outreach, but were not allowed to by the legislature back 3 years, whenever it was, 3 years ago. So what ended up happening is the New Hampshire Health Plan, which used to be the high-risk pool, said, we can apply for that grant because we're a quasi-governmental entity, and we'll do the outreach and education. So that's what ended up happening. They ended up getting the grants. They're the ones that have gone around the state. They're the ones that help train navigators and coordinators and all of that sort of thing. So those are sort of the three components that are very high level with regard to what goes on within the federally facilitated health insurance exchange. Yeah, things I just talked about. Again, I end it with talk to your agent or broker or to a navigator. It's the best place that you can, it's where you should rely to get information. You can do it yourself if you're really comfortable, but they're the experts. Shop, are you eligible? We talked a little about that. 1 to 50 employees. You offer coverage to all full-time employees, have at least one enrolling, and you may be eligible for tax deductions that could be worth up to 50% of your contributions to premiums. So it's worth looking at. If you're a small business and you've got 3 employees, you want to be able to offer coverage. You may be able to offer it much less expensively than you think. Talk to your agent or broker. Find out what it is it means for you, what kind of tax credits, if any, you might be eligible for, and then make a decision. New Hampshire health cost. New Hampshire health cost, I mentioned earlier that we have a health policy analyst and a health policy statistician. And a big part of their job was legislatively authorized maybe 6 or 7 years ago or so, where we created the New Hampshire Health Cost website. It's a website that we continue to enhance. It's a website that we're about to launch its version whatever, Danielle, 5.6 or I don't know. But we're about to launch a new version of that website, and it contains a ton of information. It's easily navigated. You can take a look at it now, but you're going to get an even new and improved one in a couple of weeks or so. Take a look at it. It's got a ton of procedures on it. It not only has the procedures, in other words, you're going to have arthroscopy of the right knee, and you want to go to Memorial Hospital, or you want to go down to Frisbee, or whatever. It'll list the carriers that sell in New Hampshire. It'll list the carriers that sell in New Hampshire, as well as the facilities that do the procedure. It'll match them up. You'll be able to see that arthroscopy, if you're insured with Harvard Pilgrim and you want to go to Frisbee, is going to cost you X amount of dollars. Because we collect all that data, and it's real data. It's data based on paid claims. This isn't a guess, or this isn't us going to a hospital and saying, how much are you going to charge for this? It's what they are charging and what ends up getting paid. So it's pretty reliable data. We've also started to develop a quality index within it. So you can see that as well when you take a look at it. And again, I would urge you, especially if it's elective. Obviously, if you're on the stretcher and your leg is broken and dangling, you're not going to try to go shopping. But if it's elective, if it's arthroscopy, is a good example, go in and take a look and find out where it's done. Find out if your provider is listed there, if we've got records of claim payments made to your provider. Find out how they compare depending on who you have coverage with. And again, we collect, it's called the All Payer Claims Database, and it's called All Payer because it collects information from all payers that pay health insurance claims. Even those that are self-insured, we're able to collect data on them as well. So it's all folded in, it's very comprehensive, and we've been, I know the legislature has praised us numerous times for the work that's out there. Tyler, who's our health policy analyst, who is the one that developed it initially, was recognized nationally 2 years ago, got a national award for, and we're actually, again, I'm proud to say that the folks at the department are the best in the country when it comes to this health cost stuff. We understand it, we know it, we develop it, and we put it out there for the public to use. We are urging people to use it. We're going to, as soon as the new and improved gets launched, you're going to see press releases on it and all that kind of stuff. Danielle's already got one written up, I think, and is going to send it out as soon as that happens. Again, it's to try to bring transparency in the cost of health care. If you, as an individual, call a hospital and say, what's it going to cost me for an arthroscopy, I 100% guarantee you're not going to get an answer, because it's almost impossible. They're going to say, well, what carrier are you with? What doctor's going to do it? What anesthesiologist is going to do it? How is, it's really difficult. But if you collect the data on the back end and collect the claims paid data, then you're assured that the data you're getting is accurate. Okay. Ta-da! I made it within, I made it a little short of my 10 o'clock.
So, questions?
Thank you. I have a few questions and a few comments. We have a citizen legislature. That means that you have elected me and others to go to Concord and do the best we can to impact policy and procedure at the state level. And I'm on the Commerce Committee, which deals with insurance issues. I was a nurse, I'm an innkeeper, I deal with, issues relative to insurance a little bit, but I don't know insurance. I didn't know insurance the way I know insurance now. And part of the reason that I understand it better than I did is because of Roger and his department. We have a citizen legislature. That means that we are going to vote and rule on issues that impact all of the state relative to these issues, many of which are incredibly important. One of the things that Roger and his department have done is to educate me and others about what it means. What is the impact of healthcare insurance on those of us who live in the Mount Washington Valley? P&C, life insurance, so many detailed issues that I understand now 10 years much better than I did 10 years ago. We have regulatory agencies, at least in my experience, that appreciate and understand our citizen legislature and work hard with us to do what's good for the state. And I have been incredibly impressed and appreciative of what the insurance department does and how well it is led to help us to do what is best for you. An example, we just last week on the floor of the House passed a law for a supervision act. The insurance department obviously does insurance examinations of insurance companies on a regular basis and looks at their fiscal information more frequently. But if they find that a insurance company has financial problems, they can put it into receivership, they can force it to close if necessary. But the Supervision Act is one step back from receivership or something more serious. And the NAIC put together a model legislation and then gave it to the legislature to look at. And the Senate and the House looked at that over a year's period of time, made some modifications, so it's not something that the NAIC gives its imprimatur on and that we don't have the ability to do something with. One of the things we did with that bill is to make it possible for the insurance company to agree to going under supervision, as opposed to it being mandated by the insurance department. So there is an intimate relationship between the regulatory body and the legislature that is really good when it comes to the insurance department. And a couple of questions, Roger, on the percentage that the healthcare insurers have for profit. You say it's 20%. Is that mandated at 15? Will that change to 15, or is 20% what it will always be?
It depends, and what I don't recall, there's a difference between small group and individual coverage. One of them is at 20%, the other one's at 15. I don't remember which is which. But yes, you're absolutely right. I'll get you the information. When I go back, I'll send it to you. I've forgotten. We don't deal with it because we don't deal with the rebates. We don't know about the rebates. That's all done by the IRS. But yes, you're right. There is a 20%. And again, I forget if it's small group or individual. And there is a 15%.
And on the cost of healthcare insurance, you encourage people to shop around. And I just want to reinforce that that's part of our responsibility in terms of controlling cost on health care. If an arthroscopy is going to cost $500 less if we go to Frisbee, and it's possible, then, and we don't choose that, then we are not necessarily helping to encourage our providers or our insurance companies to be as competitive as possible. And one of the pieces of healthcare costs that we're going to look at in this session is called balance billing. And if a provider charges $1,000 for a procedure and the insurance company has negotiated to pay $800, the insurance company cannot then come back to you or me and bill us the $200 difference. That's a law relative to called balance billing. However, for an operation or that arthroscopy, if the anesthesiologist isn't a part of the network that is in the covered procedure, then that anesthesiologist can indeed balance bill you as a backdoor way of charging us more. So the legislature is going to look at, in this session, controlling that so that that isn't possible to negatively impact the consumer. Thank you. I'm sorry I talked so much.
It's good. I have to return the compliment. Ed's been great to work with. He didn't pay me to say that, but he really has. He and his committee are great to work with. They understand the issues, and have done and are very inquisitive into. I mean, they don't simply take your word and rubber stamp it. They look deeply into what it is, whatever the issue is that's being debated.
Well, one quick question about Uber, which I've been reading about. It's my understanding that some folks only provide a few rides a month, and some folks are really working as Uber drivers. In looking at how to manage, and insure them, are you looking at the different categories of drivers?
What's the way this bill is structured, it's going to allow a company that sells auto insurance, personal lines auto insurance, to add an endorsement that would provide coverage based on usage as an Uber driver, sort of a commercial endorsement kind of thing. But it's going to be on your own personal auto policy. So that if you do it, and I don't know how it's going to be rated. We have not seen any filed with us yet. When we see them filed, we'll see how they intend to rate those things. My guess is that it's going to be rated based on percentage of usage or that sort of thing, versus just a straight rate that regardless if you are an Uber driver once a month or 100 times a month. I think it'll be based, but I don't know that for the moment.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else?
My question, it goes to the buying of insurance and buying enough insurance. As you know, I'm a tort lawyer, and I work in the arena where accidents have happened and people are in a situation where they're looking for recoveries, and way too often there isn't enough available insurance to address those, whether it's minimum auto insurance policies, very limited, sometimes even homeowner policies that aren't enough, and very, very few people seem to carry umbrella policies. You really spoke, I think, proactively here today about the role of the agent and the broker in the selling of insurance. And on my front line, it seems that there isn't enough effort to ensure ultimately that the insured is protected in the event that they have a claim brought against them. And one of the things that really worries me as the world has gone to internet insurance is that relationship with brokers, where the brokers understand at least the situation, whether someone owns a house, whether they're employed, et cetera, do they have stuff that they should insure and protect, is being lost as people spend 9 minutes online and get their insurance. I wondered from the heavens of the insurance department in Concord whether you have any thoughts on that.
A couple of thoughts. If there's need to increase those limits, then it's good that Ed's in the room, because that'll be done at the legislature. We don't we enforce what is in the regulation with regard to what minimum limits are and what how you define financial responsibility and all of that sort of thing. My own personal opinion is having that direct relationship with an agent or broker is a good thing, but in this modern day, you can buy anything online. So it's available, it's not a violation of the law. Is it the most prudent thing to do? I'd leave it up to the consumer, but personally, I like to talk to somebody about what I've got. I like to talk to somebody about what kind of minimum limits I need to carry on my own auto insurance, what kind of umbrella policy I need to have so that if I exceed those limits, I've got some additional coverage. And that's not, I think you make a good point, that's not as easy to do if you're on the internet and you're not dealing with anybody on a personal basis. But it's not a violation of the law.
So, on behalf of the Economic Council, I'd like to give you a small gift as well as our certificate. And thank Roger for making the trip north again to give us some good information. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. It's good to see you.
Yes,
Thanks to my staff for helping me put this together.
yes indeed.
Propping
And
me up so I can speak.
please do fill out the review form, the evaluation, and give us recommendations for topics. I'm always looking for suggestions for topics that would be of value for members of our business community. Next month, we're going to have Superintendent Kevin Richards come to give us a talk on the state of education in the Valley. And one of the things I'm particularly interested in, the New Hampshire Center for Public Policy did a report 2 years ago about the aging of the valley, and one of the things I hope Roger will address, not Roger, excuse me, I know you can talk about everything, but Kevin will address, is how we're planning for the fact that in 10 years, over half of us will be over retirement age. So I hope to see you next month for Eggs and Issues.
This on our new bulletin board.
Okay. Okay, the next item is tax rate.
Oh, the tax rate, yes. I'm psyched about the tax rate. I brought it, hopefully I brought it. The tax rate for the town of Conway is $2.75. The tax rate for the town of Bartlett for the precinct is $2.79. We had anticipated the tax rate to come in at $3.04, so I was pleased.
That is good news.
First time in the 11 years that I've been here that it's been under $3.
Yes.
So that's good news.
That just means we're not doing enough.
for,
That means we are excellent stewards of the public's money. Yes.
that would be a fair statement. Okay, anything else before we go into public comment? Anyone? Anything, you have anything?
I don't.
So I'll open the floor for public comment.
I have nothing to add.
Seeing none, I will close that portion of the meeting. Would you give us a motion to, oh, we gotta do this, Chris. Tell me what this is.
But that is the withdrawal for the geo-insight work, repairs to wells number 4 and 5.
Okay. So you need,
We need a motion to withdraw the funds.
okay, would you like to make that, and then we'll sign it?
Okay, I will make a motion to withdraw the funds. The withdrawal was approved on, that's today, to cover the North Conway Water Precinct water infrastructure. It's from the Water Infrastructure Capital Reserve. Wow, I'm really messing this up.
You start all over if you want.
What's the dollar amount, Sue? 21,000?
$21,557.54 is the amount requested.
Okay. To cover this was the
Well,
motor
number 4.
motor issue?
Yeah.
Oh,
pump-
okay, to
pump
cover the
and motor.
unanticipated issues with well number 4 and 5.
Motor, correct, David? I didn't write it on there, but it's
Pump
the
and motor.
pump and motor. Okay.
Okay.
So the motion reads, the motion is to withdraw $21,557 from the water infrastructure account to cover the unanticipated repairs to well number 4 for the pump and motor.
You'll make that motion, I assume?
I will make that motion.
I will second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 2-0. Would you like to make a motion to do the payroll?
Oh, yes.
I motion to ratify accounts payable and payroll dated 12/3/15, 12/3/15 November call payroll, and 12/18/15 payroll and accounts payable signed out of session.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
2-0. Would you like to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I will second that. All in favor? Thank you for a good meeting.
We are the Carroll County Cooperative Extension, helping you make decisions that better your life. We're helping kids have a positive impact on our community. We give you strategies for managing your finances. We help our communities with land stewardship and natural resource management. Our agricultural programs help support local farmers, and our nutrition programs sure to choose healthy foods for healthy living. We are an essential resource to help improve our economy and build a better community.
I guess my concern or comment would be this. It's quite obvious that the 5 improvement projects had a drastic impact on the traffic in Conway Village. From then till now, there's no comparison. We still have traffic on weekends, there's no question about that. And it was my understanding that after the 5 projects were completed, that there would be a study and an analysis made basically saying, is the bypass still needed? And to my knowledge, that has not been done. It would seem almost critical to, with the installation or thought process of this wishbone, that a study be moved up. I believe it was scheduled for roughly 7 to 8 years from now that study would be done on the wishbone. But if that's a possible solution to the remaining congestion in Conway Village, why wouldn't that be a high priority as we speak on pursuing that adventure and seeing if it is feasible and what improvement that would have to eliminate the congestion? Because right now, I believe the main concern is Conway Village, the 4-way intersection there with the traffic lights. The other 2 roundabouts that we have put in, there's a definite improvement. Everything seems to flow. The analysis that they had on the screen that you folks presented was an overestimate of what was going to take place, or the roundabouts worked better than what was thought. And if that could possibly be the elimination, I'd much rather see, and the folks that I have talked with within the town, they'd much rather see an investigation and possible solution on that route rather than pursuing the roundabout. But if you look at Route 16 traffic, there is nothing that I have seen for traffic backing up over what was called Hitching Post Hill from the old police station back to the southern direction. It just doesn't occur. And there are traffic congestions down below Conway Village, but it seems to be even an improvement with that, other than the big weekends.
That's one question, Chris.
Can you just clarify when you say the, you had said something, you'd much rather see a study on that
than doing the bypass, pursuing the bypass, rather than coming up with this information first.
Right. Understood.
Okay.
When you said the wishbone project, do you mean?
Dog bone, wishbone, I've heard it referred to both, but the extended oval.
The extended oval, okay.
Okay.
That's what I thought.
Maybe it is a wishbone. Sure. Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Okay. Our next person wish to speak is Linda Kearney. Hi, Linda.
Hi. Not too familiar with this, so I'm going to talk about East Conway Road. You know, I mean, I know you've heard it and you heard it, but where would you have been, or where would we have been this summer without that road? With you having 302 backed up, now you've spent all this summer or more months of heavy traffic going down there. 10-wheelers, all kinds of heavy traffic, constant traffic. You know, you want to see what that road's like, come here this winter, when it's almost impassable. There are areas on that road, when you go down, if you don't know this in the winter, that are so bad, your head will hit the roof of your car. The dips are so bad. Now, I've had a house for over 30 years on that road, and you talk about, you know, I mean, obviously you've at least learned that putting down a coating is a waste of your money. The road needs to be rebuilt. And you've got major logging companies on that road. There's other major companies on that road that are using that road. And because it's a state road, it doesn't get shut down, which is a good thing. So it's taking the heavy traffic in the off seasons when other like town roads would be shut down. Now I understand, I was talking to someone recently, and I won't swear to the dates, but it's always a question is why was that not numbered 113? It connects to 113 all over the place, and it's just left there in the middle. I understand there was a time, I think it was in the 70s, when the state took over that road. That was kind of interesting because I didn't know that it was going to be called 113. which I understand would make a little bit of a difference of where it would fall on repairs. And there's no question, it's a huge, huge expense. But part of that is because you've let it go so long and so bad. I think it's about 3 years, maybe 4 years now it's gone on, when you came in and gave us a little Band-Aid, and you actually only repaired probably somewhere around a mile, maybe 3/4 of a mile. The first part of the road up to the dump, that can go with a coating. That isn't falling in. It's the rest of the road. I think everyone thought you were going to come back and just do a section at a time. And I think, you know, people would have at least been somewhat satisfied if you came in and did a mile at a time. Now, like you say, you've got 8.5 miles to do. It's huge, huge expense. We know that. But this road's getting so bad, and I can't wait to, well, yes, I can wait, but what it's going to be like trying to travel this road this winter after all the traffic that's been on it this summer. You can go down there now and say, oh, yeah, it's a bad, bumpy road, and, you know, that's true. But you drive that 3, 4, 5 times a day, it's not a lot of fun. But when the winter comes, people drive over the yellow lines, down the sides. I mean, I mean, you have to, huge holes, huge waves. It's crazy. And, you know, also over the years, I've seen the road narrow. There were times over those 30 years where you have put coatings down, and the road did have some sort of bike lanes or lanes on the side, and that's kind of encroached in over the years. But it's just something needs to be done. If you at least phase it in, get something done. But I'm telling you, there are areas there that if you don't know it, when you come through there in the winter and you'll hit those waves, your head can hit the ceiling of your car, it's so bad.
Linda, and for everyone else viewing, the selectmen made application as part of the 10-year TAC process. Our application was to have the DOT fund the reconstruction from where they stopped to the finish, approximately $10 to $12 million. We offered to make it a locally managed project, as we've done a couple with you now, and we have some on the books. We also offered to take over ownership of the road upon its completion. Needless to say, it wasn't scored well in from the Regional Planning Commission. The traffic station in Conway Village affects people in the North Country. The East Conway Road does not. But the selectmen were very interested in solving that problem, which is real. Thank you.
I think it's more of a major road than a lot of people like to admit. It's used, I mean, like I said, I've been there over 30 years and people have been there longer than me. And I mean, it used to be a quiet rural road. That's no longer true. People use that all the time. Developments have gone up, and like I said, where would it have been this summer if that road wasn't used? And when there's been accidents on 302, it becomes a major, alternative.
No, I thank you for that. I just wanted to make one point. After the 250th celebration in Redstone, I was required to travel 113, so I totally agree with what you're saying. And obviously we're here, I'm here to support you as well as others. So with that, Chris.
And if I may, if you look at, and I know this is not going to totally get you what you like, but in the paving program, there are some what we call roughness paving to address the surface of the road, and then a more involved preservation treatment on East Conway Road in 16 and 18. So it is going to get some level of improvement. I mean, I personally haven't traveled that road, so I can't,
We'll take you over there on the way out.
We'll take your word for it, but I will say that I realize there are many, many roads statewide in that type of condition. If we reconstructed all those roads, we're talking about a $1.3 billion effort just to reconstruct those roads. We just haven't been able to do that with the revenue coming in. And unless there's additional revenue that comes in, I mentioned one of on one of my slides, really, we should be rehabilitating some of those roads instead of providing this, more superficial treatment to the paving. But there just isn't enough money coming in terms of revenue. So,
Better off doing a small section than just trying to put
yep. Well,
coating on that road.
yeah.
You take a ride down there now, and this is when it's good.
Yeah.
This is the good time of year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think it should be mentioned here that there's two 113. One starts at the state line between here and Freiburg, and it's the New Hampshire 113. This one in East Conway it starts out of Standish, Maine, and the only place it goes into New Hampshire is East Conway. It goes back into West Freiburg. And I think it's too bad there aren't different numbers on these roads, because strangers coming in here do get in a mess. They're looking for 113 and they see, and it leads them off into the bushes.
Asking a question of that, Commissioner, and I'll ask Commissioner Cass this, but is there a process to rename or renumber a road?
There is a process we can look at and
113A would be better.
Yeah. I'm not, I'll have to look, I'm not familiar with the two 113s, but,
Well, that other one is, I assume, is a Main 113, but it makes a loop through East Conway, goes for about a mile, then goes back into West Freiburg and stays pretty well in Maine till it gets to Gilead on Route 2 and the Evans Notch.
yeah. But yes, I mean, there is a process periodically, we review the state numberings and,
Okay, great. Our next speaker is, before I begin, I wanted to recognize Tom Bucco, our local elected official. Hi, Tom. Thanks for coming today.
Thank you, Congressman.
Is there any other legislators out there by chance? No?
Karen was here.
Karen was here? Karen Umber? Okay. It's one thing that Ray Burton always used to do, is to make sure that all the elected officials got recognized, because they only make $100 a year, so they should be recognized from time to time. The next speaker is Richard Charbonnet? Charbonneau, excuse me. Pretty close.
Yes, my name is Richard Charbonneau, and I live on Sergeant Road, Center Conway. I also want to speak about East Conway Road. It's just terrible, and I'll just leave it at that. It's just terrible, and we talk about a bypass and adding more pavement and roadway and whatnot to our state, when, as you, I think, all agree, we have a real serious problem with what we have, and we can't keep up with it. I am definitely not in favor of a bypass. I personally have not, with West Side Road and North-South Road and other shortcuts that you can go around, and I know that's just for the locals, but I don't see a problem with traffic. I really don't. I come from Lowell, Mass. I've been up here going on 6 years, and a lot of folks here have been here longer than I have. And again, maybe that's the reason why I don't see what people consider traffic up here, really traffic. I don't know if the two roundabouts will help improve what people consider the traffic on certain times here in Conway. I would have to imagine that it possibly would, whereas was mentioned, the other two roundabouts have helped with the traffic. I would rather see that. If it has to be done, it costs less money. It's less intrusive, I believe, on the environment, on wildlife, et cetera. And I guess that properties have been bought up for right-of-ways for the bypass. Couldn't those properties be sold and that money used? That's the only thing I'd like to say.
No, that's a very good point. We're just, how much are we looking for that? $42 million to sell the property off and pay back the federal government? somewhere in that range. But point well taken on that. Our next speaker is Sally
Thank you.
Mercado.
McMurdo.
Okay.
You're pretty close. Okay. I'm representing the Mount Washington Valley Bicycling Club. We're a nonprofit club that has about 115 members. And our question today to the committee is, when you're thinking about your paving projects and your road projects, are you also thinking about complete and safe streets for all users? As a bicycling club, and some of us are also runners and pedestrians, we're concerned that when road projects are funded, that we also get some consideration for the other users of the roads besides the people driving the cars and the trucks. And we're looking for our communities to be safer, for people to walk and ride in, for kids, from little kids to elderly people. You're considering sidewalks, crosswalks, railroad crossings for the safety of those users as well as for the vehicle users. That's one question. The second question is, when you're going after funding for programs like the TAP grant, are you including in those funding requests money for alternative transportation projects, such as rec paths and bike lanes and that sort of improvement?
Does anyone on the panel want to take that?
I can take the second one quickly on a TAP program. The Transportation Alternatives Program is exactly intended for what you're talking about. Sidewalks, crosswalks, transportation networks for users that are not cars and are not trucks. They can parallel roadways if they want to, and they are available for local communities. We're not eligible to use those funds. We're not eligible to apply for those funds. They are there for communities and other organizations to take advantage of it for those alternative uses.
Right.
And relative to your first question, typically those individual projects will or may address some of those, some of your concerns for other uses. For example, providing bike shoulders. We typically don't go into an area and provide sidewalks unless the community requests it as part of the overall project. Relative to the typical resurfacing projects, we typically will put back, if it's a maintenance paving type of effort, we'll put back what is there. If there are some opportunities to maybe restripe the road differently to provide a wider shoulder for those other modes for bikes to use, we consider that.
Right.
But we'll work with the community to get that feedback. And, you know, certainly we have public informational meetings when a project actually is ready to, or just before it goes out for advertisement for the bids, where we'll talk with the communities and get input. There'll be public meetings, so certainly there'll be an opportunity to provide that input. But unless it's an individual project, we typically won't go in and do some substantive widening of that project. Okay?
Thank you. Yes.
Follow up
Yep.
to his answer. Like you said about we go into communities on the resurfacing and we try to put back, you know, what was there. I assume you meant horizontally, you know, measurement-wise.
Yes.
In terms of surface, my office has gotten a lot of feedback from the cycling community about the decision to chip seal the Kangamangas. And everyone's going like this in the room, right? So in that case, we didn't put back what was there, and you know, the road speaks for itself. It's on the National Scenic Byways Register. It's on the state bicycle map. It's the road, and I'm wondering. I've heard through district that potentially there's a fog seal coming. Maybe do you know anything more about this?
I didn't know. It was put down when it made it was there.
Right. We had arrived with some of the DOT people a couple of weeks ago.
When was it applied?
About a month ago.
The 29th of September.
Okay. I'll go back and check it out.
And it was, I will say for the department, that was a learning experience for us as well too. I mean, I don't know if in planning the pavement treatments, I mean, I know our pavement management folks were looking at it from a very, myopic standpoint of just, what they felt was the best treatment for the road and not necessarily realizing the concern and impact of bicyclists and the amount of bicycle traffic on there. And it's something that we've talked about as a lesson learned coming out of this project, that we need to do a better job in vetting those
We did the
processes.
same thing though a few years back in the other district a little higher up, and then we came back and recoded that because of the same sort of issues. So if it's in the lessons learned folder.
Right, we need to close the loop on that.
Yeah,
Right,
absolutely.
okay, no. And one of the things, I've had discussion with the commissioner on this is, communication sometimes within state government. It's always something that we relearned all the time, so good communication is key when it comes to these
Is there a
projects.
possibility to grind at the white fog line and perhaps do a 3/8 inch PMST in the bicycle shoulder?
We'll look at what our options are. I can't commit anything right now, but we understand it's a concern, and if the last improvement didn't work, then we'll see what options are available.
Well, that was a great question. I'll have to say, just to plug about a month ago, there was a conference, a bicyclist conference, along with the Trails people in Concord, and you have tremendous advocacy there. And so they kind of remind us what we should be doing in state government, so keep at that advocacy. With that, our next person to ask a question is Representative Tom Bucco.
Thank you, Councilor. I can be very brief. I signed up to speak on East Conway Road. There's 3.1 miles from where the last contract ended to River Road that's barely impassable now, and it's not impassable in the wintertime. I drove out there Saturday, my neck is still killing me. In the winter, in the springtime, you can't get by it. What was said earlier about the waves it's my understanding that there's logs buried underneath there, and you have to get down deep enough to get that stuff out of there and put a good gravel base in there. So I didn't want it to just slip by. It needs to be addressed.
Thank you very much. Our next person wishes to speak is George Epstein.
Commissioner, thank you for scheduling this event here and making this evening as it is for us to have the hearing in Conway. I'm going to tilt. I'm going to try to shut that off. Even better.
There's always a spotlight on you, George.
Well, it's where I want to be, Joe. There's no question about it.
Did it twice.
It'll take a, well, it ought to turn on. Please wait. All right. I won't be quite as quick as Representative Bucco, but my name's George Epstein. I am the chairman of the board of the ECHO Group, which is the business that is most impacted by the dog bone rotary construction that's been proposed. Our business has been in the location right at that corner in Route 16 and Washington Street for 15 years, or approximately 15 years. We're a healthcare software company. We write electronic medical records and medical billing software for organizations around the country. We employ, 50 or so of the folks we employ, of the 80 people we employ, are based in the Conway office. That number is growing because, good thing, electronic medical records are becoming more popular, and the pace at which we're growing is increasing as well. We are not traffic experts. We don't know what the impact of that rotary system would be. It's not for us to make that judgment. But the impact on ECHO is pretty significant. And we wrote a letter a few months ago to the selectmen where we described the very negative impact with regard to noise, safety, loss of green space, significant loss, parking, the attractiveness of our facility in recruiting people, which is an important part of our ability to grow our organization, reduced access to the parking lot and to the building, security for the building, and so on. When all is said and done, that facility, and we've reviewed this with our architect, would not be usable as we use it now as a result of this project that has been sketched out. The purpose of my comments today is to make sure that everyone's aware of the costs associated with us moving this business from that location to wherever we have to go. We have invested millions of dollars in the facility. We did so over this past 15 years and did so with the expectation of a bypass, which had always been discussed, ultimately taking care of the traffic. And we continue right up over the past couple of years investing hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in the facility. One of the reasons we're investing that much is because our business has changed. We now provide our software as a cloud service. People connect to us from all over the country, so that about 18 months ago, perhaps 100 people in a day from outside of ECHO would log into servers in our offices. Today it's about 6,000 people log in every day. These are 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week healthcare organizations. And that pace of that growth we anticipate continuing, and that's good. That's a good thing. But we've built out our facility to be able to serve as a comprehensive data center, both for our customers and for local businesses and organizations. The concept of moving a data center that runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and has thousands of people on it is quite an adventure. And the expense associated with that move and replicating the capacity of that system while you're in the process of moving is very expensive. Another interesting aspect is that that corner, and right around that corner, is one of the most unusual places in New Hampshire with regard to it being the crossroads of 3 complete high-powered broadband loops of fiber optic cable. All that stuff runs by there. And so it's not only that there's great capacity there for internet connections and broadband, but it's redundant. You can have the system fail in Portland, Maine, or in Laconia, or in Rochester, and not lose your operation because you can have a second, and as we do, and a third loop locked into the thing. So it's a very expensive process for us to leave that location, and the millions we put into the facility directly, the cost of the move itself, and the ability to replicate the redundancy of the internet connection. And so there's nothing in the budget that talks about the costs associated with incurring that cost. I am again mystified, as I have been for 30 years, at North Country Council's complete cluelessness with regard to doing any sort of due diligence when it comes to determining need in the community and the impact of projects in the community. And they have demonstrated this again and again for many years. And I recognize that this is on there in part due to the process that was led by that group, but this is very much in keeping with their failure to communicate with the community as a general rule, and has been the case for 30 years. That's the only part of this that makes me particularly upset. In any case, the process of taking that facility and forcing us to move to another location will be an expensive process. We've not hired lawyers. It's not anything that's going to happen tomorrow, apparently, but we would like to be sure you are taking those costs into consideration as you assess the value of the dog bone solution to traffic. And again, we don't know whether it's a good solution for the traffic or not. That's not our area. We just want you to take into consideration what the impact will be on one local business.
Okay. Yes, go ahead, Earl.
If I could just sort of follow up on that, and then I think Paul has some information that we'd like to hear from him as well. But George, describing the relationship with North Country Council over the last 15 or 20 years, you're accurate up until this last year. with the new executive director, Christine Frost, and with Mary's help and others, we've reestablished a very positive relationship with North Country Council. And this project directly came from the town of Conway. It originated out of conversations that Paul and I had with Joe's predecessor and Commissioner Sheehan's predecessor one day about, and the philosophical background of that was, the bypass was always contingent on the local improvements not solving the problem. Then the bypass would be the option. And you mentioned analyzing that again. And our point was, we think, as others have said here, that the local improvements that have been done so far have solved a lot of the problem. So we said, what if we did a few more local improvements and looked at that? Would that not solve the problem and mitigate the need for this tremendously expensive bypass that there is no money to build anyway? So this was the first part of that discussion, was this dual roundabout. And we acknowledged that the DOT design would have a significant impact on surrounding properties. The library as well. The library is not really interested in losing any of their property as well. So we had an alternate that Paul DeLiangeli, our engineer, had come up with, which is simpler and fits much more within the existing right-of-way. So our point, and David had talked about this earlier, was let's take a look at both of these options here in the next few years to see what the impacts which is feasible and which is not feasible, which would work. Is there a design that would work to not cause a huge impact on surrounding properties and also solve the traffic problem? So our point would be, let's look at these things, see if they work before we sit and talk about them for 7 or 8 years and then do the design and analysis to see if they work. So Paul can kind of run you through the two designs.
Go ahead, Paul.
If you like.
Interesting. Can I make one point to that, Councilor? Yes. I'm not disagreeing with any of that.
Good. I'm here for another reason. We have no opinion about whether this is a good idea or a bad idea because we don't know anything about traffic management. We were talking about ignoring completely the impact on one business that serves this community.
Well, just to add to that, I have 108 towns and 4 cities. And it's always incumbent of whatever regional planning organization, Department of Transportation, to communicate with the town officials, who in turn hopefully are communicating to the civic leaders and to the business community within their own community. So again, I'll emphasize the theme is communication again, so, but point well taken.
And if I may, this is a concept that is being entered into the 10-year plan. This project will have its own project development process to ultimately develop a solution that fits the community, that minimizes impacts on the environment and right-of-way. So there's a lot more that will be discussed as part of this project in later years. What we're talking about here is, this project being included in the 10-year plan, so that ultimately it will have an engineering component and a right-of-way acquisition component, and ultimately I think it's out in 2025. So there is going to be a lot more discussion with the community relative to this project, and like I said, to consider the surrounding
Does the
properties.
budget get locked in though, the 5.1 million that's shown in here?
What I would,
part of that process?
What I would say is we're trying to adhere more and more to a budget. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's the fixed cost for the project, but we're trying to financially constrain some of these projects so they do not escalate to be 2 or 3 times the cost.
So isn't this the time where the consideration for those costs associated with taking properties would need to be considered?
I would say that as we learn more about the project, yes.
So when would we know whether you were responding to the issues that I've just raised? Doesn't that have to be done now as part of this? Isn't this my one shot at pointing that out?
No, it's absolutely not your one shot. There'll be a kickoff meeting for the project sometime in the future.
But it's locked in. The 5.1 million is what you want to stick to, though. And this would add substantially.
What I'm saying is, generally speaking, yes.
Well, but this could add 60, 70%, 80%, 100% to the cost of the project. So aren't we getting locked in? And that's why I think it's a big deal for us to be here.
Yeah, well, it's a good point. We need to understand those. I mean, it's a very conceptual plan and estimate at this point. Understanding the potential additional right-of-way impacts will have to be looked at and considered. And Chris is right, as it gets further on and as it gets into a more detailed design process, those costs will be refined. We review the 10-year plan every 2 years in terms of priorities and updates of costs. So,
Do you change the budget every 2 years? Is it wide open again for those out-year projects to be modified in terms of price?
they're reviewed every 2 years. Yeah, we look to get to.
But is it wide open to change those costs going out to those out-year projects? Or by putting it on now at $5.1 million, are you locking this thing down?
I would say we're estimating it to the best ability that we have based on the conceptual nature. If we get into a more detailed design and the project becomes more expensive, we'll have to evaluate those costs.
So shouldn't this be the time when you reconsider that and before this is approved?
I think the time to reconsider that is when we have more data and more information.
This debate is fueled by the presumption that the property has to be acquired, and the designs, least intrusive and most intrusive, don't support that. And there was money put in the budget, because even if you take a tree or a bush, a property owner is entitled to that value. We met with the assessor to assess that value based on a square footage methodology, based on a functionality methodology, based on what I saw the state use through all of the bypass acquisitions. I was here with the initial public hearing, so I've been through the entire process, right? And we're not losing parking. We're not losing tremendous amounts of green space. George doesn't have to pick up shop and move.
Counselor, this is my problem with this whole process. I led my conversation by saying we're not experts on on traffic management. We don't know what we're talking about. We don't know what the impact of this dog bone will be. But here I have someone who does know about traffic management telling me about the impact on the business and the facility that we've been running for 30 years. This is someone who apparently is an expert on what a facility associated with healthcare software needs to be and what its capacity configuration needs to be. And I find that very disappointing.
Well, point taken, just that there'll be more meetings, more discussions, and, obviously the community needs to, speak with Mr. Epstein about this proposal and have kind of maybe some type of ad hoc committee of both sides meeting together on it in the future.
If I might, though, the drawings are here for the commissioner. Your staff, Bill Oldenburg, is standing up in the hallway. We work with that group.
Yep.
And we heard Mr. Epstein describe that he's an electron-based business, a cloud-based business. I reiterate that this is the horizontals. I don't see how that affects software business. But we'll be able to speak with him further. Thank you.
Yeah, no. So, you got that all answered? Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Sorry.
So our next speaker would be Mike, is it Chansey or?
I wasn't going to say anything, but now I'm
Okay. Okay. Yes.
It occurs to me that we're talking a lot about a 10-year.
Yes.
To me, that sounds, maybe you don't consider that long-term planning, but starting to get long-term to me. Maybe I don't know how many more 10 years I have, but at any rate, you also talked about, and I'm a part of the bicycling community here, and that's where I'm coming from, and we talked about the shoulders and how basically, especially I think if I followed the conversation correctly, it sounds like, especially on the smaller roads, you basically are putting in shoulders about what they were before. If you're going to repave a road, you're just going to keep the width of the road about the same. My point would be, too, is one, to go along with what we were just talking about here with the Echo Group, is that I believe that the recreational basis of this area here is, the strongest part of its economics, or a large part of its economics. So bringing in more bicyclists, making the community more friendly to bicyclists is, I think, an economic benefit, and it should be considered. I know you're under, these budgetary constraints, but maybe you need to talk to some other people back at the budgetary process or whoever. Anyway, we need to get somebody that says, hey, there's an economic benefit to improving, the community of improving the roads and the infrastructure for bicyclists. And my other point about the long-term planning aspects of this thing is that if you've already got a process in where you say, hey, whatever's there before, that's just what we're going to replace. And I'm going to rely on going back to each individual community. I'm going to go to this town, this little group, that little group, to figure out how I'm going to get a bike path through there, or if they even care about a bike path. Well, us bicyclists do care. We go through fairly long rides. 25 miles, 30 miles, 50 miles. So we're going through a lot of communities. We need to have bike facilities and infrastructure there that is all connected, that makes sense for bicyclists. So I think that the long-term planning process needs to include a more comprehensive, we don't really want to ride on the big roads. We don't want to ride on the turnpikes. We want to ride on the smaller roads, but with a good shoulder. Maybe a 3-foot, 4-foot shoulder, well paved. That's all we really are looking for. So if you can incorporate that somehow into your planning, I would appreciate it.
Bill, do you want to respond?
Yeah, so a number of you mentioned that you did ride a tank recently, and I think Larry Keniston from our staff was out there with you. Larry and some of the other folks, Eric Paddleford in particular, head up our bike ped efforts and advocacy within the agency. And one of the things that they do is they have an advisory committee that reports and makes recommendations to the commissioner for, I don't know that they've met with her yet, but I'm sure they will be shortly. They certainly have met with Bill and with Chris Clement and other commissioners in the past. One of the things on their to-do list is to do an update of the statewide bike ped plan so that we have a picture as we're doing updates of the 10-year plan, the same as we would do for freight and transit planning and corridor planning and the type of things that we're talking about here in Conway that we've done in the planning level studies for all larger projects, but specific to bike ped, that's one of their short-term to-do items that they're looking to complete, is to update. I think it's about somewhere, Tim, you can probably correct me, 10, 12, 15 years old now, the last bike ped plan that was completed, including bicycle routes throughout the state.
Yeah. I think it's that is on for next fiscal year, maybe?
And if I may also, just to add to that, by policy, if we go in to reconstruct a state road, we try to put back at least 28 to 30 feet. So we have 11-foot wide travel lane and at least a 4-foot wide shoulder. If we're going to reconstruct the road or do a major rehabilitation effort and, a widening. Some of these efforts that we're talking about, yes, we're just going in to just address the surface, and that's all we can afford to do at this time. But if individual projects or other efforts where we go in and reconstruct the road, we do account for that bike shoulder.
Okay, that's what we're looking for.
Yes.
And, just hope we get there.
Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Our next speaker is Rebecca Harris. And Rebecca, how were you able to type this?
Sharon typed it.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I was going to say, you have a typewriter back there.
Yep, it's really good. All right. Well, my name is Rebecca Harris, and I'm the Director of Transport New Hampshire. And I want to thank the Governor's Advisory Commission on Intermodal Transportation for hosting these public hearings on the 10-year Transportation Improvement Plan. Transport New Hampshire leads the statewide transportation initiative, made up of organizations working to create a modern, integrated transportation system that gives people options for getting around. Every important issue facing our state is affected by how well our transportation system is serving us, from economic growth to public health. It's important that policymakers look at the bigger picture when deciding where to spend our transportation dollars. Seniors and millennials make up a third of New Hampshire's population. The population over 65 will more than double in the next 20 years. And both groups are asking for more transportation options. Seniors want to stay connected to their communities as driving becomes more difficult. And millennials want to stay connected with their online communities rather than spend hours behind the wheel every day. Transport New Hampshire commissioned a survey this summer conducted by the UNH Survey Center, and I have copies for anyone who wants that survey. It shows an increase in public support for investing more in transportation options across all options, including roads and bridges. As an example, 59% of those surveyed want more investment in senior and special needs transportation, and they are willing to pay more in taxes and fees to make it happen. Transportation affects personal and public health. The ability to walk and bike to more of our daily destinations, including schools, will help reduce the economic burden of metabolic diseases such as diabetes, which cost Americans $254 billion in 2012 and is projected to cost $514 billion in 2025, which is equal to the entire Medicare budget of 2010. And as the percentage of state Medicaid expenditures for the over 65 population increases from 25% today to over 50% in 2020, providing transportation access to preventive health care will become an essential cost control measure. One of the most pressing issues facing our state right now is the heroin epidemic, which is bringing tragedy to families across the socioeconomic spectrum. Treatment options are essential to tackle this problem, but so is the ability for an individual to access those treatments. People struggling with addiction often face the additional burden of losing their license to drive, and without transportation to